Hello, hello. This is Eli, Plague of Gripes, once again, and boy, do I have a story for you. If you don't know, this is an art video where I draw something and then talk over it, normally. Although, this time around, I actually did the reverse. You see, recently, due to a lot of different events, I had a giant brick of anxiety and stress just sitting on my chest for about 2 weeks in a row. Felt just great, just great. And as I do sometimes, I decided I'm going to record one of my art gripes, and then after I'm done, I'm just going to figure out what I'm going to draw afterwards. And so I did. I recorded my little video, and it actually was very good. I thought that was a great recording session. I feel like I'm going to help a lot of people. I feel much better about the way things are going, and it was on point. It had a theme. It's just great. And afterwards, after I got my Dark Tide video published, I drew my picture, which ended up being Winnie, as you can see here. Because, you know, whenever I'm feeling a bit off, usually I draw Winnie, and things get better. Because Winnie is always there to help. And post-Winnie, after that night, I was done with the drawing, which is yesterday. I started doing assembly on the video, because I thought, well, I could do this really fast in the morning. I'll just overlay this on top of my audio, which I'll import, and then tomorrow I'll be ready to just press render, and then everything will be done. And I'll finally have a day off where I can just do whatever I want to. Boy, I was wrong. Because as it turns out, the audio that I had was actually for the Dark Tide video. So I went looking, it's like, well, where's the waveform that I saved before? And it was nowhere. And so I loaded up the file that I use for actually saving art gripes. I thought, well, I'll just export it again. It wasn't there either. So I went searching for any sort of backup audio, maybe the recycling bin, maybe a temporary folder or something. Nowhere to be found. It was like I never even did it. I guess I just did it for me, which is of no use to anyone, including me. So that explanation aside, the point of this video is going to be sort of the same thing, except now I'm not trying to expunge a bunch of stress, I'm just trying to talk about that. Someone was saying maybe you should just redo it again, and my point was, if you have any experience doing this, if you tried to just re-record the same train of thought, you end up with just a worse version of the thing that you already did, which is what I'm concerned about. So instead I'm aiming for a little bit more of a focused version of that. So this video is going to be about specifically recovery from anxiety, having a positive outlook on your own life, and trying to have a positive effect on other people's lives. That sort of stuff. So now that I'm doing a reverse art gripe, I can also talk about the drawing, in which case we're drawing a Winnie here. I go through a lot of iterations here, and just to briefly touch on this, I decide on this offering hand gesture, and then I go back and I say, wait a second, I've done this before. And I started looking through all my old drawings, and I discovered almost every time that I draw Winnie recently, I draw her doing this same exact sort of gesture, or something very similar. And then, after kind of going back and forth, because at this point I had already gotten down the primary, which had taken a long time, I thought, you know, I'm doing this for a reason. The whole offering hand thing, I just like the gesture of doing it, because this is something that is important to me psychologically, the act of actually supporting other people and bringing them forward and making sure that they know that someone else is with them. This was occurring to me whenever I'm trying to think these things up. Otherwise I could just draw, you know, Winnie's spread eagle on a bed or something, whatever you people want. But I'm not going to do that. So inevitably I decided, you know what, I don't care. I'm just going to do the same thing. And I'll say, hey, this is the 2024 version. Unless I've already drawn it this year, in that same pose. In which case it's 2024B. Don't worry about it. Anyways, point being I was trying to do things a little bit differently. I didn't put as much effort as the Pokemon drawing because I didn't want to lose my mind completely. That said, this drawing did end up taking about 10.5 hours, which is kind of short for me these days. So what were my sources of anxiety this time? And the answer is almost always the same. Sure, there was some real life stuff. The political climate in the United States recently is also being a contributing factor for obvious reasons. And don't worry, I'm not going to talk about politics because honestly, I don't care. That's always been me. I've never really cared too much about politics. It's just that it's become increasingly important to the point where you just are not allowed to ignore it anymore. So, Since then, I have learned to go through and start curating absolutely everything that I'm looking at. Just, if something is daring to be political in front of my face, just hide post. Just done. Nothing more like this. Show posts like this, don't show posts like this. And that has rectified some of that problem. I would suggest that you do the same thing. I had also been worried about the channel fairly consistently, about how good it's doing, whether it's growing, and so on. And to reiterate, nothing really bad is happening. The views for everyone across YouTube, I've talked about this before, have dropped fairly consistently. People that used to make $1 million per video are now making like 200,000, that sort of thing. For me, the consistent, I used to think that like 32,000 was my consistent number back when the channel was at its heyday. And then afterwards I felt like, well, 24k is my new consistent number. These days it's more like 18k or something. So it's just a consistent drop off, and it worries me. They're good consistent numbers, but it still worries me because as just a person that is trying to succeed, you want to feel like you're constantly improving. You're not hanging on for dear life, and that's the thing that worries me. I don't like that feeling of not advancing, of not improving, of not, accelerating to something. Whenever I first started the Patreon, I had, reward tiers, like if I get to this point, maybe I can hire an editor, I can grow the channel, and so on. And I was never able to. By the time I actually got a hold of a proper editor, someone that I could actually trust, then things had kind of slowed down, and I didn't really have the income to just keep pumping money into that. Because the amount of money that I would have to pump into making a video, via editor, would never bring in that same amount of money. I was always losing money in the process of doing it. So I would actually have to change the channel structure, which I've done recently, or I'm trying to. I don't know how many of you have noticed, I've been much more consistent about uploads recently. The past, let's see, about 5 or 6 weeks, I can't remember, I've actually been uploading videos at least once a week. And I've been doing this thing where I'm uploading an art gripe, followed by some sort of essay video. And I've learned I can write like 15-minute long videos, thereabouts. It's just that it requires a very focused approach, so I've been trying to get better about doing it. So my current plan is to try doing that for a while. Of 1 week, do an art gripe, 1 week, do a video essay. And just try to dial into that. Point being, the channel is fine, I guess. My income really hasn't changed much. It'd be much nicer. It'd be much nicer if I was making like another $100,000 a year. I say another $100,000, but it's more like I'm making just enough to stay above, worrying about welfare. I don't know why I said another. Makes it sound like I'm already making that. I've never made that. The most money I've ever made in 1 year probably just like 30,000 something, so barely anything. And that's probably part of the problem. I've always had very low expectations for myself because I grew up very poor, and throughout most of my life I was struggling to even find a job, much less receive any normal amount of pay. So by the time I actually got the Patreon going and I was making something that was basically just a job, like it wasn't a good job, it was just a sustainable form of income that for most people would be either normal or below normal. To me, that was very exciting, and I was very happy just to have it. So my ambitions sort of stopped there, because I'm just so used to not having anything. So as I've gotten older, and in the past few years, I've been trying to be more ambitious, because by my nature, also, I'm not really that ambitious of a person. I don't crave power or wealth or anything like that. I've in fact always wanted more of a simple life where I don't really have to worry about too much and I'm able to take care of the people around me. And, that's always been it. And unfortunately, it's sort of part of life that you can't really just desire only that and get it. You have to keep wanting more in order to bring in just enough to be able to supply yourself with that. Which is sort of a trap, because there are some people that also are saying that they can't survive off of a mere 6 figures a year, which to me is absolutely insane because that is, like 4 or 5 times the amount of money that I'm making a year. And somehow it's not good enough for them. And this because they're not living within their means. Now, sure, some of it is that they are living inside of a city, and I can understand a different environment requires different amounts of money and so on. But just because the rent is a little bit higher, does not mean that it's $60,000 a year higher. Point being, it's easy to end up in this trap of living beyond your own means if you keep wanting more and trying to accrue more. Thankfully for me, I've never been materialistic. I barely own anything. Just what I consider to be essential to what I'm doing, and my biggest flaw would probably be that I'm not much of a pack rat. My brother's a pack rat. I'm not much of a pack rat, but I do hate the idea of throwing things away that are valuable in some way. Like, say, an older PC or something. That could probably have something done with it, and I'm not going to throw it in the garbage. That's insane. I could probably, give it away or refurbish it. I don't know. And that's the problem. So sometimes I'll run out of room because there's like 2 or 3 PCs lying around here. And that's kind of it. That and clothing, I suppose. I have a lot of old, gnarly clothing from whenever I was in high school that I probably should get rid of. I definitely have a drawer that is devoted to exclusively things that I don't wear and have no intention of wearing. But at the same time, it's like, well, they're still clothes. And it's one of those things where I'll get around to getting rid of it, but I just never do. So, that's part of it as well. Anyways, point being, ambition. You have to keep moving or you're going to die. I'm not going to go full, you need to be a shark, you gotta keep moving or you're gonna die. The old 1980s financial wizard nonsense. Not that extreme. But it is true that you can't be too sedentary. Life is about adaptation in general. Human life as well. Things are always changing around you. Things are not going to stay the same. Whenever you're a child, you kind of just accept that the things around you, even if they're messed up, and like it was in my case, you just accept this is how life is, and you normalize that. And it becomes very easy to normalize that. Sometimes people wonder why people stay in like abusive situations or so on. And part of it is that you completely normalize it and you don't even see the problem until you're far enough away from it that you realize, oh, that was really bad. I was super lucky to be out of it. So here's something that's actually very important to me, is the idea of being able to generate passive income. And this is not going to turn into a financing video, but I have like very low amounts of investments from the small amount of money that I have in things like the stock market, in the sense of having like a Bogle 3 fund where you're just trying to make sure that you have a little bit of money in the entire market. Because the idea is that if the value of your currency, whether it's the euro or the dollar or whatever, crashes, then it's not going to be worth anything anyways. So hoarding your money like a dragon is completely pointless. Whereas if you try to keep it invested in the entire market itself, then as that currency inflates or depresses or whatever, then it stays at that worth at whatever the market happens to be. In other words, if you're working like a minimum wage job back in 1940 or something, and you accrue $100 to your name, and then you warp forward in time to now, that $100 that would have been worth a lot back then, it's now worth pretty much nothing. It's just a waste of your time. Whereas if you had invested that money in something and had a return of, however many percent, even like 5% up to, 20% or whatever it happens to be, however you invested it, then that grows with the market, and now that money is worth more than it used to be. And that's the idea with, investing in general, is you just have that money sitting there, effectively doing nothing, but still growing. Something that I was kind of obsessed with for a while, and I would love the idea of doing it, is like owning a parcel of land so that I could rent that out as tillable soil to a farmer, because it is just land. You don't really have to do anything to it, you just own it. And because you own it, you're able to just make money from someone else working it. You don't have to worry about it. That is passive income. Now, one of these things that is not really even taught much, I guess, but it's something that everyone sort of learns over time, each person eventually wants to try to figure out if they can have some form of passive income, because your time that you have on this earth day to day is very limited. You can only work so many hours, so you can't just keep taking more and more jobs. You can't have someone with 20 jobs saying, oh, after I clock out here, I'll go to there. There's only so many hours, and you have to sleep, you have to eat, and so on. Eventually, you run out of active time jobs that you can have, and you have to have passive income. So recently, I was thinking about different ways of doing that. So I started looking into all sorts of different things. One of them was like, say, having storage buildings, because you don't really have to do anything to storage buildings necessarily, as people just store things there. You'd have to deal with the people, and sometimes they will, just not pay you, so you have to, it's that component of it as well. But my consistent problem with any sort of project like this is that you need lots and lots and lots and lots of money in order to be able to even conceive of something like that. So in the case of like a storage building, usually estimates are for cities, because things are always obscenely overpriced in cities and people don't care about reporting things unless they're in cities. So typically I was looking at an investment of anywhere between like $1 to $5 million in order to create such a thing, which is not going to happen ever. And even if you were to buy a used one in this area, I eventually found out that's still like $500,000, which is money I will probably never have. So you see the problem. Anytime you have any, and it goes for land too. Land in this area has skyrocketed. Back in the 1980s or so, land could be worth next to nothing comparatively to now. These days, is so many thousands of dollars per acre, you just can't get a hold of it anymore. Like $8,000 an acre is something that you guys probably have no idea what an acre is. Like a city block might be like 5 acres, I guess. I'm not really sure. This is off the top of my head. I don't know how big a city block really is. But like a fairly big yard would be about 4 acres. One ordinary like white picket fence yard might be like 1 acre, that sort of thing. And so imagine paying $8,000 for one of them. Now imagine paying enough for an entire field that you would farm or rent out to someone. That is too much money. You can't do that. You would be paying out the nose, and then it would take you decades to be able to recover from that cost. Same thing goes for stock investments. If you are looking to try to generate, say, an income off dividends, you can do that. You can make $20,000 a year off just dividends, in theory. But that would require you to invest about $1 million into stocks of some sort, assuming that the stock is stable. If that company flounders or something, then you're really up a shit creek. Point being, it takes money to make money. That's an old saying, but the more you understand it, the more, wow, it is true. It takes a lot of money to make money. Which is why when you hear about old money, that's where it's coming from. The idea of a family will keep accruing things over time and reinvesting their immense wealth into generating more avenues for generating passive income that they will then hand down to their children. That's where, nepo babies come from, like nepotism, cronyism as well. That is the only way to really make passive income, is to just be so wealthy that you're able to, just keep doing that generationally. And that's the reason why you never want to give up things like that. My family used to have land, but my father was rather foolish, and so were his relatives, his brothers as well. So all the land that my grandfather had is now squandered and gone. Our family just doesn't own anything anymore. So all the chances I had of being able to have some source of passive income are now completely gone as a result. So I'm effectively starting from scratch in that sense. Like if I want to have generational wealth for my children, my grandchildren, and so on, I would need to be starting from zero. And something I find that wealthy people do not understand is how difficult it is to start from zero. I love watching out of touch rich people talk about, well, all you have to do first is just make your first $10,000 at the age of 18, and then every one of the comments is like, wait, what? your first 10K at 18? Are you insane? Or they will talk about having a low investment, a really low amount of money, a very, very low amount of money, so low, of $100,000 to invest it, and everyone, wait, what? Excuse me? It just, the complete, I'm sure once you're at a point where you're wealthy enough, you just stop thinking about how difficult it was to get there, unless you have distinct memories of living out of, your truck and things like that. It's kind of rare to find someone that is wealthy that started very poor. Typically, they did have a lot of contacts, they had a lot of opportunities. Something that I have thought about a lot is how there are a lot of rich people that brag almost about going bankrupt like 5 to 10 times, which is not really something to brag about, because that means that you were foolish almost a dozen times in a row, and you didn't handle things correctly, and you were very risky. Something that Warren Buffett said, and I'm not calling myself a genius here, certainly, but he said that intelligent people tend to have a higher degree of difficulty in actually becoming wealthy because they're too conservative about what they're doing. They're not, in a way, they're not foolish enough about how they handle their finances, because there is a certain degree of risk requirement in order to make big investments to see some sort of big return. So typically that's the reason why whenever you look at certain billionaires, they come across as being buffoons or idiots in some way. Or, they're just at least foolish. They'll say something that seems like it might be smart, but then you see them do something equally idiotic on the side. You can think of your own examples. And that is just because there is a certain degree of personality that is required for this sort of thing, where you are going through great risks that, a more normal person, regardless of their level of intellect, just may not do that. Anyways, I'm sort of deviating here. Point being, in order to have any level of success, you have to have some level of aggression. You have to actually go for it. And I've talked about this in the past because I kind of gathered this from my days of trying to be a writer. Of if you want something, then you have to take it. Like the YouTube channel even. Most people just think about the fantasy of doing it. Everyone has some fantasy about, if I did this, this is what my life would be. And I can do it, I'm just choosing not to for the moment. And they'll just never get around to doing it. That's an extremely human thing to do. Almost everyone in the world is like that. And that's why most normal people typically are normal. I'll get around to writing that book someday. I'll get around to making that YouTube channel. I'll get around to asking that girl out. That sort of thing. It's the fantasy, the secure fantasy of living in our own imagination that ends up condemning a lot of us. So many of us will inevitably find this sort of equilibrium where we have just enough to feel secure, and then we will stay there. And the longer that you stay there, the more risk that you happen to be at, because, like I said, life is always changing. There's always motion in the world, and we always have to respond to it. And that's where a lot of our anxiety comes from, the fact that we're not able to respond to it. So one of the things that is important, especially when you're younger, to learn, is how to be able to be adaptable, and how to be able to change with the things around you, how to especially be happy during the course of those things happening. So in my stress recently, I've been going back and forth on all these ideas on what to do. And part of that is a motivational sort of evolutionary thing where if someone is really stressed out, then they're going to want to find solutions, or they're going to want to retreat. You do one of those two things. You either ball up, or you start doing more dramatic things in an effort to fix the problem. And in my case, I kind of switch between the two. I switch between the two a lot. But having hit a wall in all my passive, income problems, because I don't have the money to be able to invest to make more money, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't be able to make that money back in my own lifetime, so it's kind of a wash. I would just need an absurd amount in order to even get started, which I'm never going to have. So I was thinking about things that are more accessible to me. And like right now, this platform is accessible. The fact that I have a moderate amount of success on YouTube is fine. It's not amazing. I've never pulled giant amounts of numbers, but I have a very consistent base of people that like to listen to what I have to say. And I'm very, very thankful for that. Whereas most other people are constantly shooting for the algorithm, so they'll have 1 or 2 videos that will make like 200,000-300,000 views, and then they'll drop back down to like 200 views. I've seen that complaint a lot from a lot of different creators. And that is because they are not, it's not a matter of their consistency, it's a matter of their appeal to a specific sort of base, a niche. And in my case, I am very niche. But I was thinking, what sort of passive thing can I do on, say, YouTube or the internet in general that I could just fire out, have it be done, and then see it generate some sort of passive revenue. And during the course of all this, I was like jumping around YouTube videos, and of course there's lots of, this be your side hustle sort of videos that, it's just, there's lots of people that's how they make money. This is how I made my first 100 grand, and it turns out, oh, how'd you make it? I peddled a bunch of how to get rich quick schemes, and that's one of the easiest ways to make money, is to tell other people how to make money. With the joke being that they don't actually know. They just know that one trick, and that's it, because everyone needs money and they don't know how to get it. But a lot of these YouTube videos were suggesting making YouTube channels, and I was laughing as I was watching some of these, because they're like, oh yeah, you just make 100 videos. And after those 100 videos are made, you'll just have a consistent revenue stream coming in all the time. And that's really funny, because that's not how YouTube works. That's not how anything really works. You can make those 100 videos, but people are going to pay attention to them for a very short amount of time. And there's 1 or 2 videos that they'll come back to and watch ever so often. But in general, people are only going to pay attention to a video in like the month that it's released, and then that is it. Ever so often, it'll pop back up. YouTube might do a recommendation or something. But other than that, you have to be consistent and you have to keep making things. So yeah, you can make a YouTube channel, and then make 100 videos, and then never make another video. And guess what? You're going to make a little bit whenever you first do it, and then afterwards it'll just cease to exist practically, and you'll never make any money off of it ever again. Unless you're just absurdly lucky and YouTube really loves showing people the same videos from 2014 or whatever it is. So that's not really a thing. I was thinking more about things that I could do very quickly. So I was looking at all sorts of different things. I was looking at like trail cam footage. Like, what if I have woods around here? What if I put down a trail cam and just have the ability to just, crop some footage of the animals in the area and just upload that? Would that be popular? Probably not. But it's something that I could do, and it might be somewhat easy. It was an idea. But another problem I have is, if I did something else, it would probably need to be on another channel, because there's 2 problems. One is the obvious of, this is the channel that I have now. It has its numbers, it has its subscribers, it has the people that pay attention to me. If I made a completely new channel, then sure, I could advertise it on Shorts or something, but it would be new. And you don't want to do that unless you absolutely have to. I'm not, Simon Whistler here. I don't have a huge network of people that are all working together and I just so happen to be there reading their scripts for them. If you rebrand yourself, like change your online identity, if you have a new channel, you are effectively starting from zero again for really no reason, and that's extremely detrimental. Anyone that's ever done that before, had a little bit of moderate success, and then you change your name or something online, you know what I'm talking about. It hurts you a lot. And so I returned to my podcast idea, which I've been more serious about lately. I do have some people that could be co-hosts now, finally. That's something I'm not quite as concerned about. I'm not going to go into all the details of that. There's a bunch of other things that I could probably assemble. I have more access to more people that might be able to help me. But I'm also worried about being able to pay them. Something that I was talking about... I'm not going to give away too much information here. Something I was talking with another YouTuber is how he got started by telling the people around him, I can't afford to pay you. But the more success the channel sees, the more I will be able to pay you. So the more that they grew, the more money that they made, and it was able to be distributed more evenly. But out the gate, you can't just be paying people hundreds of dollars for something that's probably going to make you like $5 on YouTube. So lately, in the talking about what the podcast could be, we were discussing what should it be about, because I had an idea of, what if I just made like a podcast series that was just talking about Star Trek episodes, and that way you could go through all the Star Trek episodes of a series, and the movies and so on, and then it would just be a complete series podcast, and you could be done, and it could sit there and, in theory, generate that passive revenue stream. And again, that's not really much of a thing, but it's possible that they might see more success, but I kind of doubt it. One of the lessons that you'll learn from doing, say, Let's Plays, is that whenever you do an episode 1 of something, lots of people will tune in. But as soon as you go past like episode 3 or 4, the views start to drop off really, really considerably. And people, if you have like a big finale, then a lot of people will show up for that. But otherwise, all the videos in the middle will just kind of go nowhere. I know Game Grumps had that problem for a while, where Aaron was really preoccupied with doing nothing but one-offs, because he noticed that people weren't really tuning in for an entire Let's Play series. And eventually they sort of reached an equilibrium where I think on the weekends they're doing actual Let's Plays of like part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to, like part 50 series. But otherwise it's just one-offs throughout the whole week. And that's probably a better balance. But point being, in relation to the Star Trek idea, people would probably go, oh, episode 1, like if you're doing TNG Encounter at Farpoint, oh, this is interesting. And they would watch through that, and then they would get to episode 2, be like, okay. And then by, like the end of season 1, no one would really be paying that much attention. You'd probably be getting, a few dozen views, few hundred views, whatever it happens to be. I have no idea. So there would probably be a massive drop-off. Something one of my co-hosts has been looking at is supposedly right now, this is probably more, I've been wasting a lot of time. This is something more I wanted to talk about. Lately, people have been focusing more on podcasts that are just listening to people. Like, almost not parasocial, but more community-oriented in the sense of it's more about personality than it is about topic. Those are the most popular podcasts right now. So while some people do things like make a podcast that is devoted to a very specific niche, a very specific genre, like say, something about exclusively disaster movies, or a podcast that is exclusively about slasher horror films from the 1970s and 80s or something. You can do that, and there's a very specific niche for that, because the point of doing something so niche is that it's more easily searchable. Whereas if you're doing something where it's focused entirely on personality, then no one's probably going to see it in the first place. It doesn't matter if you're the most bubbly, fun-loving asshole in the whole world. No one's going to care, because they don't know that you exist, and that's a typical SEO problem, the search engine optimization problem. You're sort of existing below the fold, as it were, and there's no way for you to have any visibility in order to gain any traction in the first place. But anyways, the most popular podcasts are ones in which there is the notoriety of the people that you're watching being people that you love to listen to, which is something that I do have, and I find that I bounce off people better than I do just here. Like, whenever I'm doing my art gripes, I'm a little bit more serious. I'm not as silly as I normally would be. So all those comedic elements to my personality don't really come out as much, because I'm usually more introspective, and I'm not serious, but, I'm more focused whenever I'm doing this sort of thing. So that's what I've been gravitating towards more lately, is the idea of just doing more of a generalist podcast where we're aiming for like 40-minute episodes or so, and just doing those once or twice a week at most. And just having that be a consistent side hustle, as YouTube loves to put it. And maybe that will grow a little bit, so maybe even one day the podcast will be more popular than my channel. I don't know. But it is something new, it is advancement, it is movement. And that's what's important to me. Anyways, to loop back around to what I was trying to talk about here. People are really into podcasts that are about personality and actually sort of, again, not it being parasocial, but feeling more like you're in a group of friends that are all talking together. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. The other day I was out in the parking lot talking about life and politics with some friends from high school. And this is something I was trying to nail in with them as well, is a lot of people were pointing out online lately, and this is something that was being discussed in the parking lot. My older friends, I should mention, all of them at some point have been pastors. Two of them are teachers, one of them is like a historian. So to them, the way that they view the world is very much so oriented around like Christianity and history, and also how to deal with young people and so on. So the topic came up, and this is something that's been spoken of online as well recently, is younger generations are getting, more right-wing, and I don't want to go too much into this, but like there's a lot of popular YouTubers recently who get popular because they're angry. They're not really making good content. Typically, in most of the cases, they're just stealing content. They're just watching someone else's videos and like barely commenting over them. It's not transformative at all. But it's the affirmation that I think is, especially with younger, like Gen Z men and younger boys and so on, there's that appeal because they are upset, and rightfully so. And they're disenfranchised with the world around them because of the nature of how society has changed and how technology has changed and so on. We spend way more time, talking to one another through devices and not actually speaking to people. And in the process of trying to connect with other people, like back in the day, if you met someone, like romantically or as friends or whatever, it was very, very organically, and it was usually through either, usually friends and family, work perhaps, or some sort of like group gathering parties and so on. But that's not really much of a thing anymore. As society has changed, we've become more distanced from each other. And as that has happened, people are more isolated and lonely and more prone to depression and, stress and so on. And there's been a lot of labeling of younger men as, being incels and such, because of the fact that they just can't connect to other people, and that is not their fault at all. And it's this consistent attacking of them that I feel like is what is driving them towards these more extreme measures, extreme ways of thinking, because they're looking for that validation. They want someone to, put their hand on their shoulder and go, yes, you have a right to be angry. Because they do. It's just, unfortunately, in this case, it's very exploitive because the people that are doing this with them don't really care about them. They care about what they can do for them politically or, as far as their income goes and so on. But anyways, that's what I see. I see a lot of people looking for a replacement for the things that we organically, as human beings, typically should have. We're wired to engage with one another as communities. We're supposed to have parties. We're supposed to meet people through friends and family. We're not supposed to be looking through lenses and such. And this is not turning into an old man yells at cell phone sort of thing, which was very popular about 20 years ago or so. But you get what I'm saying, is this is just a natural occurrence. As society has changed, as technology has changed, this is naturally going to happen in any sort of civilization. Like, most of my life is online. My work is online. A lot of my friendships are online. My relationship is online. Everything is online. Because the relationships that we have in our real lives are going to be extensions of whatever it is that we're doing day to day. If you are someone that is like a scientist or something, and you're going to the science business... if you're going to science business, I was imagining like a comical big square building that has science business around the front. Then you're probably going to be running into people that are doing that day to day, and your viewpoint of how people interact with each other is going to be in that sphere. It's going to be in that little network. It's going to be in that bubble. And if you meet someone romantically, it's probably going to be another scientist as a result, and so on. If you are a redneck, love to go mudding and hunting sort of guy, lots of people like that in Tennessee, lots of people like that even in Kentucky. Most likely you're going to be spending so much time doing that as your pastime that if you do run into someone, it's going to be someone that has very similar interests. So as a result, whenever you grow forward, it's going to continue to be on those paths. That's how cultures develop. That's how people develop in general. So when it comes to technology, the same exact thing happens. Is if you're online, all your things are going to be online because you're not spending as much time doing something else. And because there's not been any sort of cultural reform centered on technology and how people use it yet, because we haven't figured that out, a lot of us find ourselves isolated and wanting for personal interaction. So it is incredibly understandable that a lot of people don't have that interaction, are not developing socially in a way that they should be, are not receiving the care and love and attention that they need to have, especially when they're growing up, and instead are just growing up isolated and feeling like the world is against them. That is extremely understandable, and something I wish that more people understood. It's a very American problem to see someone with a lack of privilege or some sort of pain or wound or something, and to blame them for having it in the first place. And perhaps just as rightfully, it is natural for some people to want to go the other route and to coddle people like that, when it is also up to them to be able to have the strength to be able to seek out answers and resolutions on their own. Which is sort of more of a stereotypical, like, American right versus left-wing sort of issue, where the left wing typically is the one that is seen as being the coddling one that wants to live in an unrealistic world where they're, just holding everyone in their arms and cradling them. Oh, such a good baby. And more of a right-wing mentality, on the other hand, would be this sort of American dream looped-in thing where you had to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Everyone is their own individual. If you fail, then you deserve to fail. And the people below me deserve to be stepped on, that sort of thing. All of this loops back into itself in a really messy interweaving of different effects and causes and so on that I'm just not going to get into. My point is only that if you have stress, if you find that you are angry at the world, if you are looking for answers in the form of people that are equally upset, it is perfectly understandable. It's not something you should be doing, obviously, but it's perfectly understandable because no one is helping you. And that's where I come in. No, that's not where I come at all. It's just something that I'm aware of and I think about a lot. So when it comes to, like, the little bitty thing that I'm thinking about, where I'm thinking about doing a podcast or whatever, that's something I think about a lot, is the fact that one of my strengths is that I engage on a personal level. I empathize. And even though I have the Plague of Gripes name, where I'm known as being Mr. Negative, especially in the last 5 years, 10 years, I'm a very, very positive person. Maybe about everything besides video games. The video games is one thing I'm negative about, I suppose. Because that's something that has always been important to me, is uplifting other people, because I know what it's like to basically be left completely alone and be abandoned. Even if you're around other people, to just be isolated and ignored. Because that's how I grew up. That's been my entire life, basically. That's why so many of my art videos have almost nothing to do with the art. I'm sure I'm drawing something in the background right now. But most of the time they're just like self-help in a sense. They're me talking in a way that hopefully I'm trying to help the people that are listening to me. And even whenever I do like video essays that are about video game design or whatever, it's usually me trying to be helpful, trying to look at things from an analytical point of view, and hopefully, if not change whatever it is for the better, but, just make people more aware of the thing that is that they like about whatever it is that they like, even if it's something that I don't like. So when it comes to making content, that's what I'm focused on. When it comes to even just, in general, like interacting with people day to day, that's what I'm focused on. I don't like having pointless fluff conversations about nothing. I like getting into the weeds and having real conversations about things, which can get me into trouble sometimes, but that's what I enjoy doing. But unfortunately, I'm also living the reality of I need to make money, which is something I've never liked, but, it's part of it. One thing you have to worry about with making online content is you have to... It's the same problem that's in any industry. Most of the money that comes into any sort of industry is usually in the form of younger people with lots of disposable income. And these days, younger people don't have as much disposable income as they used to, but they don't really stick to it the way that an older person would. Like me, if I make money, I'm probably going to hoard it and try to reinvest it, and because I'm really worried about that sort of thing. Whereas if I was in my 20s, and I actually was making money, I wasn't, but if I was making money at the time, I would probably be spending it in some way. But what are kids interested in these days? I don't know. Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, TikTok. Those are like the 4 things that I wrote down, because that's the only thing I could really think of. Because I don't really associate younger people with having very specific tastes in things. Because I know studies have been done where they're not even interested in like a sex or porn or anything like the cliches would tell you that they are. They're disengaged from it. They don't really care too much about like movies and films, series, or seemingly anything. They just seem to have developed like I did whenever I grew up, where I find one or two very specific things where I can secure myself into a little bubble and I just stay there. Because I know if I leave that bubble, things get bad. And I would love to meet another me from like Gen Z. Someone that thinks like I do, that would be willing to sit down and be very open and analytical about looking at it from their perspective. Because that's a perspective that I don't really have because I'm not from the same era that you are. I just feel like that we're probably very similar, and I'm just sort of a 40-year-old version of whatever Gen Z is going through at the moment. Maybe. I have no idea. In the world today, there is a lot of stress, anxiety, a lot of fear of the future. There is a lack of security and a lack of confidence in the knowledge that things can be better. Like with my Star Trek podcast I did, the reason why I thought about Star Trek is just because I grew up with it. And maybe more importantly, it is one of the few shows that is completely predicated on the idea that things not only can get better, but they did get better. And now we're trying to spread that out to the rest of the universe. This is the premise of a lot of Star Trek. I think that the world needs more positivity, and it needs more camaraderie, and it needs a lot of change in how we approach problems, and how we approach each other, and how we take care of each other. And that's much harder in a culture like America, where everything is very focused on the individual. That if you are doing poorly, that is your own fault, and you don't deserve help. We live in an era of misinformation. We live in an era in which foreign political entities are putting tons of money into bombarding us with misinformation, and also just trying to attack us personally in order to make sure that we are, as a culture, divided, depressed, and so on. This really isn't even a conspiracy. I mean, we just know these things are happening. As an example, I guess there was a technology review article that stated that MIT found in 2019 that Russia, specifically their online influence networks, had reached 140 million Americans every month. So the majority of people that use any form of social media. It's just a daily part of life. This is not really conspiracy. This is just the environment that we live in. And we haven't corrected it yet. We don't know how to correct it, or even if we can. And I don't state that to try to panic you or anything. I state that only to reinforce the notion that instead of worrying about fighting ghosts and trying to insulate yourself from the world, instead we should be trying to form communities that are taking care of each other. Hopefully not in a culty way, but more of a let's hang out and play video games sort of way. Not the other one. So when it comes to me making new forms of content and so on, I want to help people. I want to ensure that they feel better about the world that they're in. I want them to feel like they're able to spread positivity to the people around them. So the tone of what I would want to go for if I was doing a podcast, this is what I was talking about. If I wanted to do like a podcast or something, it would not be about criticizing everything, which to me seems antithetical. But whenever you actually look at my body of work, most of it is not critical. I've even thought about the idea of just, if I did a podcast, not even using the Plague of Gripes name, or maybe even changing my name, which is not really something you should be doing. If you have an online identity, you probably need to stick to it. But I do feel like the tone of whatever happens to be will be more positive and aimed towards trying to make people feel better about their days and to feel better about the things that they're engaging with. That is my hope anyways. And trying to sustain that over a long period is difficult because that is a day-to-day thing. It's like self-care. In self-care, you have to try to make yourself think positively, not delude yourself, but to reinforce the notion that I have many things in my life that are good, and here's what they are. And then you list them out, you self-manage, you stop worrying about spreading yourself too thin. The things that are in your life that are toxic, you try to remove if possible. I'm not going to go into all of that, but point being, it is management. All life is about trying to manage the things around you and to curate things in such a way that you are taken care of, and then as a result, you can take care of the people around you. So that's what I'm trying to do. That's one of my motivating factors. I want my life to improve because there are people that I care about, and I want them to have more secure, protected lives as well. And that's sort of been my frustration because I don't have... it's that passive income problem. You need money to make money. You need the power to be able to change things for the better if you want things to be better. Although I guess the flip side of that would be like a Mr. Beast situation where, sure, you're paying people money for their cancer treatments or whatever, and then you get accused of eating babies. Or I don't know what's going on with him lately. I don't know a single thing about that man. I've never seen a single one of his videos. But that's kind of how I say things. I tend to view things from the perspective of you need to try to make a very small circle around you positive and uplifting and try to make sure that the people there are taken care of, because then they can have their own smaller circles and it spreads out from there, if that makes any sense. This is kind of how I view the world. But anyways, that's where I've been and what I've been thinking about and the direction that I'm trying to go. Is I'm going to try to keep making the things that I'm making here. I would love to try to accelerate it, if I could. But unfortunately, I'm sort of stuck on that active income treadmill of all my videos need to be in my voice, and they need to be narrated with my voice. So as a result, I'm sort of limited in how fast I can do things. But I know people would like a podcast, especially if I had interesting co-hosts. So that's what I'm aiming at for the time being. What its name would be, I have no idea just yet. Knowing me, I'm probably going to agonize over that over the next few months, trying to pick out the perfect name. Anytime that I was like writing and trying to create a new character, I would spend literally weeks sometimes just researching different ways of looking at them, and eventually I would figure it out and be like, oh yeah, that's the good shit. I did the same thing with the Scary Lessons girls. I was coming up with all these ideas like, what would the name of the setting be in a way that really encapsulates everything? And whenever I finally realized, oh, Scary Lessons, because it's about growing up, it's about the fact that they're like monster girls, the fact that they're situated in a school, it all came together, and I felt that exhilaration of, yes, the perfect name. Feels great. Whether I'll do that with a podcast, I have no idea. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed my reverse art gripe of Winnie that I didn't know at the time I was going to draw Winnie, and also my replacement audio for the audio that I lost that is slightly worse than the original audio that I did lose. Now that is some Plague of Gripes content right there. That is on brand. By the way, I would not say that this is my best drawing or anything. A lot of people were commenting in my Discord they really liked the way it looks. I'm guessing primarily because of the lighting. But the lighting to me kind of looks like she's welcoming you into the afterlife or something. Maybe best not to think about it. Anyway, tune in for more updates on that. Maybe, or maybe I'll never mention it again. We will see. It just depends. Let me know what you guys think about the general idea, my meandering thoughts on the nature of Gen Z and culture as a whole, and how misled I happen to be, and so on. Nothing about politics, so I'm just going to delete that crap. Join my Discord instead, and then go look at the Treasury of Animals, but don't post text in there. It's not for talking, it's only for cute pictures. See, I'm looking in there now. There's a video of someone's pet rat stealing rigatoni or something off their plate. Pretty good. Good stuff. I'll see you guys next time.